commence the business sessions of the conference. In this 3-day conference, today we will delve into the theme of gender inclusion within the internal structures of the national human rights institutions. Our focus today will be on how these institutions can incorporate gender perspectives into their organizational frameworks so that their policies, practices, and operations align with the principles of pluralism and equality. So to begin with, we have a paper presentation on gender equality and pluralism by Ms. Fasoha Aishath, who is the Manager of Capacity Development at the Asia Pacific Forum. You will have 10 minutes for your presentation, followed by 10 minutes for a Q&A session. So I'd like to request you to proceed with your presentation.
Before I get started, on behalf of the APF, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the National Human Rights Commission of Nepal for their leadership in bringing us together for this important regional event where we are examining the progress we have made to identify the gaps and strategies for a way forward to promote and protect gender equality. Before I dive into this presentation as well, I want to acknowledge my colleague, Philip Wardle, APF's Legal and Policy Manager, who is actually the author of this paper that I'm presenting. He was unable to come in person to the conference, so I'm making this presentation on his behalf. So this is also a disclaimer that I'm not the expert on this subject, but I'll try and give justice to the paper. I've been told that the paper will be also shared with all of you, but it was not available right now, but they will be made available to you later today or in the next couple of days. We'll begin by looking at the Paris Principle. This is the most important document for NHRIs, as it is the international framework that defines the standards for the mandate and performance of NHRIs. It is quite different from most of the other international human rights instruments as they were adopted by NHRIs themselves at a conference in Paris in 1991, with actually quite limited involvement from the states other than through its endorsements in a UN General Assembly resolution in 1993. It is actually quite remarkable that there is no mention of gender or women and girls in the Paris Principles in the document itself. But through the paper, we're demonstrating that the concept and applicable standards of pluralism have been subsequently interpreted to include gender diversity, especially the equitable representation of women in NHRIs. And this has mainly been done through the accreditation process. GANRI is the global alliance of the national human rights institutions, and its constitutional function is actually to accredit NHRI compliance with the Paris Principles. So it's quite key, the Paris Principle is quite key to the existence of GANRI. GANRI has set up a subcommittee on accreditation. This is the body that undertakes the process of accreditation, and the SCA meets twice a year in Geneva. It's actually quite a rigorous process, as NHRs who have undergone through the process would attest. It involves a written application and also a video interview with the NHRI. Following the review, the NHRs are either accredited with an A status if found fully compliant with the Paris Principles, or with B status if they're partially compliant with the Paris Principles. SCA is comprised of NHRIs as voting members. So it is actually a peer review process, NHRIs reviewing other NHRIs. The UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights acts as SCA's secretariat. This UN involvement actually adds further credibility to the process. A-status NHRIs have the right to participate at UN Human Rights Council and to full voting membership of GANRI and the APF as well. This sense, the status also sends an important informal message that an NHRI is credible and effective. The SCA's recommendations are published after each session, and these reports are an important source of jurisprudence on gender equality and the Paris Principles. The Paris Principle itself actually establishes quite high-level standards, but it lacks sufficient details for application in practice. And that's why the SCA has developed the general observations to further interpret and elaborate the the Paris Principle standards so that it can be practically applicable. The general observations address gender equality in a few different contexts, and we'll look at those next. The general observation 1.7 on pluralism is the main standard generally for gender equality. Pluralism requires that the representation and participation of diverse voices in the work and structures of an NHRI. This includes women, but it also includes other minority and or vulnerable groups. In practice, there is no prescriptive standard on applying the pluralism standard. It can be achieved through different measures. For example, this could be by having diverse representative decision-making bodies or consultative appointment procedures, or by having advisory bodies that are diverse and through cooperation programs with civil society, or by having diverse staff. For human rights commissions with multiple member bodies, the SCA will examine the composition of the body and whether it represents gender diversity. There are different approaches in an institution's legal mandate to support gender equality. One approach is for the general requirement that appointing authorities consider gender diversity when deciding who to appoint to these bodies. Or it could be having a prescribed proportion or minimum number of female members. Some examples of this is mentioned in the paper, like the NHRIs Act of Mongolia and Korea. The second approach is generally considered a better practice, but it could also backfire if appointing authorities don't appoint the minimum number of female members. There is actually no clear threshold for what the SCA considers sufficient gender representation. However, 1 of 5 members is considered insufficient. Other examples in the paper also mention that 3 out of 14 member bodies is also insufficient. 1 out of 5 and 3 out of 14 is about 20%. So that really looks at, you can tell that it's not equitable or balanced representation. Another relevant general observation is 1.8 on NHRI selection and appointment process. A consultative and participatory process may provide opportunities for gender representation procedurally. For example, widely advertising the positions, making the selection and appointment a consultative process could be some of the ways that you look at it. The SCA also looks at criteria for appointment and whether any of these may limit the pool of female candidates, particularly the requirement to be a lawyer or judge where men are overrepresented in the legal profession or the judiciary has come up as issues. This has, for example, come up as issues in the reviews of NHRIs of Ghana and India. Gender representation and diversity among NHRI staff is also considered in the accreditation process. There is a question in the written application process on the proportion of female staff. This is crucial for single-member NHRI bodies like ombuds offices, who cannot, ombuds offices have one person as the leadership body, and they cannot support pluralism through the decision-making body, for example. So as with leadership, within staff as well, there is no threshold on what is considered sufficient equitable representation. However, SCA decisions indicate that proportions, again, between 20 and 36% are all insufficient. The SCA also looks at NHRI policies and recruitment processes to examine whether these support improved gender representation among staff. However, SCA decisions are always not very clear on what is expected of The Paris Principles and the General Observation tend to focus more on the structures, legal protections for NHRI independence. But there is some consideration of the NHRI thematic mandate and performance, for example, in General Observation 1.2. This General Observation states that the NHRI's mandate should be interpreted in a broad, liberal, and purposive manner to promote a progressive definition of human rights, which includes all rights set out in international, regional, and domestic instruments, including economic and social and cultural rights. As you'll notice, there is again nothing on gender or the rights of women and girls. However, in practice, the SCA does examine the equality of NHRI, the quality of NHRI performance through its thematic programs. That is, whether the NHRI is taking positions and addressing the most important issues in that national context. This becomes sometimes the basis for adverse accreditation results. For example, it could result in downgrades or deferrals if SCA finds that the NHRI has not sufficiently addressed human rights issues. It is not common to see NHRI programming on gender in this context, though. This could be interpreted positively, that it is a sign that NHRI programs on gender rights are of a high standard and SCA has found no issues in this area, or it could be negative as well, in that perhaps it indicates that SCA does not sufficiently interrogate NHRI programming on gender. We're hoping that it's the first one. And with that, it brings us to some reflections. Paris Principles and the General Observations establish fairly clear expectations on NHRs on gender equality internally, both at the leadership and the staff level. But as we've seen, there is limited guidance on expectations for the performance of NHRIs in their mandate. So it is important to note that the General Observations are reviewed from time to time by the SCA. A review process is actually currently taking place, and NHRIs do have the opportunity to provide their input into the process. With no express reference to gender or women in Paris Principles in '93, when it was adopted, the trajectory over the past 30 years has been towards higher expectations on gender equality. Today, there is significant focus on gender diversity in the jurisprudence of the SCA, and hopefully this trend will continue and NHR's understanding and performance of gender equality standards is further strengthened. That's really the gist of the paper, and like I said, there's actually quite a bit more detail provided in the paper, and hopefully you will have the paper available to you soon. We are, I think, time pressed, so if there is some questions, we can take a few, but I also wanted to say, like I said, I'm not the expert in this area, but if you do reach out to me, I can connect you with our legal and policy manager to follow up with any technical, any detailed questions, but also I think the next panel would be quite key to unpacking some of this as well. And Johnny White from the OHCHR is also here, who is quite an expert on the SCA process as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Faso, for your presentation. I'd like to inform you all that Faso has been working with the team of NHRC from the very beginning for the preparation of this conference, and we also value the support of Asia Pacific Forum for helping to materialize this event. Proceed to the first panel discussion of the day. Our next session is on pluralism in policy and practice. The session will be chaired by Justice Anup Raj Sharma, the former chairperson of NHRC Nepal, and it will be facilitated by Mr. Gauri Pradhan, the former commissioner of NHRC Nepal. And as panelists, we are honored to have Honorable Sulaiman Al-Kindi, the commission member of Oman Human Rights Commission, Mr. Johnny White, the human rights officer at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and Honorable Farkhanda Aurangzeb, the Commission Member of National Commission for Human Rights. I kindly invite all the speakers to come forward to the stage and begin the discussion.
Brief review your work. What? Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me to speak about my commission here in the panel. I've been asked to tell briefly about the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan. I am the commissioner from Balochistan. We have 4 provinces and a capital city, and therefore we have 5 members, and then we have 1 member representing the minorities that live in Pakistan. So that makes us 6 members and 1 chairperson or chairman who chairs our commission. Now, the mandate of our commission was formed through an Act 2012, and thereafter the preparations and formal things kept on happening, and the commission started functioning.
You should be brief. You introduce yourself briefly.
Right. I am the commissioner from Balochistan. I represent the province of Balochistan. I am Dr. Professor Farkhanda Aurangzeb. I'm a professor by profession. I've been teaching English literature in the university, and I am a regular. I set up the Women's Studies Department in Balochistan in 1987 when it was brought into as a center of excellence, and then now we have a teaching department of English Gender Studies. So, and thirdly, I've been a teacher of law because I'm a law graduate as well. So that's my introduction. I'm sorry, I thought he was asking me to introduce my commission. So this is the commissioner from Balochistan representing Pakistan.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Namaste. I'm Johnny Bayoga White with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Particularly, I work in the National Institutions and Regional Mechanisms section. So OHCHR in general is the UN body responsible for supporting states in the establishment and strengthening of NHRIs. And our section within OHCHR is the thematic entity responsible for that. Our section also, we serve as the secretariat to GANRI and the secretariat of the subcommittee on accreditation. And I'm directly responsible for supporting and strengthening NHRIs within the Asia Pacific region. So it's a pleasure being here with you as we discuss pluralism and gender inclusion within the body and structure of NHRIs. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. I'm Sulaiman Al-Kindi, member of the Oman Human Rights Commission. Later on we will discuss things. Thank you.
So thank you. We are far behind schedule. So may I request paper presentator to present the paper.
Thank you very much. Very good afternoon. As already mentioned, this panel discussion is focusing on pluralism in policy and practice. So whenever we talk the policy and practice, I wish we could focus basically on 3 major areas. That what is pluralism in policy matters, policy instruments, followed by pluralism in mechanism, that is particularly about the formation of National Human Rights Institution and also appointment of the staff for the National Human Rights Organization, National Human Rights Commissions. And, well, policy matter is related to the constitutional provisions as well as the national laws and national policies that guides the National Human Rights Commission to operate its activities, its action in reality. And whenever we talk about practice, well, This is basically about the implementation of the plan of actions made by the National Human Rights Commission's National Human Rights Institution in actions. So I humbly request our panelists, who are very experienced commissioners and officers in the field of gender justice, pluralism, and gender equality matters. And well, this forum, we have 1.5 hour time allocated for this session, and I wish I could provide maximum 15 minutes each to our panelists, honorable panelists, and followed by half an hour question and answer session. You are requested at that time to indicate your questions to the particular speakers. And at the end, I have also allocated the time management, that is 5 minutes each. Each of the panelists can clarify or respond to the questions targeted to you. So this is a great opportunity to start this panel discussion, and thank you very much for Ms. Fasoha Aishath. That was a great resource information. Actually, that provides us lots of information for this session, actually. So I thank you very much to her. And her presentation we have observed just a minute before. That was wonderful. And on that basis also, you are requested to link up the gender equality matters in your perspective, in the perspective of your NHRIs. And we have also the representative from OSCHR. You can cover as a, the Asia Pacific level also. So here we have 3 honorable persons, and they have already provided information and introduced by themselves. So thank you very much for that. And may I start it with Honorable Farkhanda Aurangzeb. She is the Commission member, National Commission of Human Rights of Pakistan. So the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Since I represent the National Commission in Pakistan, I would like to go back a little into the history, how we comply by things and how we started doing it up. Way back when we look at the history of gender inequalities, we need to pay gratitude to the 4 world conferences that we had. And luckily, out of those 4 conferences, I'd been a participant of 2 of them, and a Beijing conference was the last one. So after we received the platform for action, the government was very eager, not by itself, but of course by the pressure of the civil society and other bodies that had been working for the Gender Equality Index. They, after we came back with the platform for action, we in 1996 signed CEDAW. We had signed it already, we ratified it. And once it was ratified in the country, then the work started with a great pace. We moved on, and then for the compliance of our commitment to CEDAW, the first thing we did was to look into our laws and policies, what was lacking there. So after having had an overview with consultations all over the country, it was decided that we need to have a change in our national laws. So we got a promulgation of 9 pro-women laws. Initially, there was no law that could harness the child marriage. There was no law that could influence the acid throwing act, which was very rampant in our country. There was no law for addressing the harassment of at workplace. There was no law for all those norms and traditions which violate the rights of women and the girls. And then there was no law to see that all the balance that is required in our customs and traditions need to be harnessed. So we had 9 pro-women laws. And when these 9 pro-women laws were promulgated, there was a very, very rapid move towards its implementation also. So lots of trainings took place to make people aware. The lawyers were trained, and then the judges were trained, and then the prosecutors were. So all the bodies that were necessary to address those laws had very, very rigorous trainings conducted to see that they are. And again, we had the Center of Excellence for Women's Studies established in 5 universities of Pakistan, 1 in the capital and 4 in the 4 provinces. And by setting up these Center of Excellence for Women's Studies, we made it a point that the knowledge of and the importance of having gender equality within the country, why it was so important. And through the teaching of those gender studies and women's studies, it was women's studies initially, but then in 2000, again at Beijing +5, when gender came in, we changed the nomenclature of those centers of excellence as gender studies departments. So teaching of gender studies, it was a great initiative, because then the new generation who was not aware about these terminologies started adopting them. Then policies were also transformed, because once the gender balance, we created a special quota for women to be included in the political arena. See, so when women into politics was stressed upon by all the pressure groups, including women and the civil society organizations, thereafter we could manage to have lots of policies being changed. So with the change of these policies, the shift was now towards, so we had 33% women into politics. So our assemblies, there are essentially 33% of women parliamentarians to be there. So a gender balance movement kind of a thing urged the government to see that all their policies are also gender sensitive. At the Civil Services Training Academy, at the judges, and then the lawyers and other secretaries and institutions, all these civil servants were started being gender sensitized. There was a component which said that they need to be gender sensitized so that they understand and realize how important it is to have an inclusive environment for women, an inclusive and conducive environment for women. Because if women are not part of an activity, the dimension of that activity cannot be measured in terms of progressive policy, because there are the 2 components, women and men. And besides that, in Pakistan, it's not only that we consider men and women as gender, we are very, very sensitive towards transgender community, because that's one marginalized group that has been always. So we had policies for the transgender, and thereafter, initially they did not have any identity at the national level. So our courts, there were applications put into the court in terms of their recognition, and there was a movement, and all the transgender persons were scaled up a baseline survey was held, and they were provided a national identity card which all of us as normal citizens carry. Again, with disability, with the population of disability that we think should be very, very inclusive, they are the most marginalized, there had to be some mechanism to make them come into the mainstream. So that a special law for disability was passed. Again, the process was the same, that voices were raised and then the government had to give in to that. And disability people also granted special identification so that they can walk in. A 5% quota into every institution, government or non-government, is compulsory to have the disability population be inclusive into that. So not only pluralism, but inclusivity in a conducive environment is also very, very essential. Now, when it comes to the working of NCHR for that equation that we are looking into for gender, in the first place, I would like to tell that in our commission, there is a gender balance. There's a gender balance in the sense that we are 3 women in the commission. One commissioner is from Karachi. She's a female, Anis Haroon. I am from Balochistan. I am a commissioner from the province of, and our chairperson is a female. We have one member from Punjab who is a male, and we have one member from the KP province, and we have one member representing all the minorities in the country. Now, amongst all the minorities themselves nominate which community they would like to have on board during this, the session that we are, the tenure that we are here. So when it comes to implementation of things, see, we make it a point that anything that is seen to be diverting from the mainstream of all-inclusive environment, we make a protest. We see that then there's an amendment which follows it, and through that amendment, we bring in, NCHR Pakistan has also been very, very instrumental.
Yes. You have completed your 10 minutes and you have 5 more minutes.
Okay,
so
thank you for informing. So I'll wind up within those period, 5 minutes.
I would like to request you to focus on the NHRC laws, how inclusive that is in the context of Pakistan, and how, inclusive is that, particularly regarding the appointment of the human rights officers, staffs in your context. And at the same time, I would be grateful to you if you could also refer if there is any SCA recommendations to the Pakistani Human Rights Commission regarding gender and pluralism.
Right. You're talking about the NHRI staff that we have in yes, we have a gender balance there. Not only gender balance in terms of male and female, we also have persons with disabilities recruited into the system, and that adds to that addresses the pluralism. We have minority members in every office so that we maintain it, including our head office. I hope that addresses your question that I'm... So in our support staff, it's not only that we have males in the office, we have females also. In terms of our administrative staff, we have more than 11 women working as an administrative staff, and we have 7 men who are amongst them. So I think that when we have an inclusivity of diverse groups that are there, we have minority people working as our support staff members, we have administrative officers from different ethnic groups of the country, and then we have a transgender as well as person with disability part of our working group in the NCHR Pakistan. Does that answer?
Thank you very much. You have a few more minutes.
Okay, so if I have 2 minutes, I would like to explain that the law that we have that governs the NHRI also focuses on pluralism, and our sections 10 says that we need to be inclusive and we need to be diverse when it comes to having people on board. So the most important task that we consider, besides many other important ones, is that we focus on human rights education. And for this, we have MOUs signed with universities, with schools, with colleges, and we have consultants who would go and talk about the human rights education. We have outlined a curriculum because we feel that if we want to see the implementation of all human rights being realized, it should be right from the stage of childhood that they should be infused into the minds of students. When they grow up, they would be well sensitized about the issues that we are raising at this stage in the 21st century.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Whenever we talk about pluralism, the research findings reveal that there are basically 3 different types of pluralism: cultural pluralism, political pluralism, and philosophical pluralism, and there might be more. That's why pluralism is a political philosophy, basically, that holds people of different beliefs, backgrounds, and lifestyles that can coexist in the same society and participate equally in the political process. So this thing, we really would like to link it up with the development process of National Human Rights Institution. So we have a friend and a speaker from OSCHR, Mr. Johnny White. He's a human rights officer of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Welcome, sir. And I'm very happy that I'm already introduced with you some time ago when you have visited Nepal. So it's a great time and great pleasure for us to listen to you.
Thank you very much. And first, I'd like to say it's a pleasure being here in Nepal again and having all of the NHRIs around, being able to share with you in this, on this important topic. For me, not just from the OSCHR perspective, but also as a former staff of an NHRI, this topic is close to my heart. The issue about NHRI's development and strengthening is something that is close to my heart. And I want to say thank you to Madam Fasoha for the presentation and the paper. I know prepared by Philip. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here. But thank you very much for the insight you provided. First, let us just maybe take a look at just a short definition of a few of the issues. If we're talking about pluralism, gender, let us try and put that into perspective and see what we're talking about, right? So when we say pluralism, we're talking about the diverse and inclusive nature of society. For NHRI, it must be that representative body. And when we talk about gender, we know it's about the socially prescribed roles that have been assigned to individuals within society. Why are you talking about the roles under gender, with the broader picture of pluralism? You're talking about every facet of society, ranging from the issue about sex, even down to gender, or also your cultural status, your standing, your beliefs. Everything is being taken into consideration when you talk about pluralism. So going back to the Paris Principles, like Fasoha said in the presentation, it is that document that gives the direction and the guidelines as to how NHRIs, National Human Rights Institutions, should be set up and must operate. And I'm happy that you even have government institutions being part of this process, because the operation or the establishment and strengthening of NHRI is not exclusively the responsibility of the institution, because NHRIs, they are state bodies. They are responsible to help promote and protect human rights within the state. And if that must be achieved, it means it is the end result of the state to ensure that that institution is strong and playing the role possible to do that. And so from the Paris principles, as Fasoha said, just a couple of guidelines laid out, not in detail. And then the subcommittee went about developing the general observations, which they are basically interpretative tools to say how these principles should be applied. And the SCA recommendations that have come up, they are meant for the strengthening of institutions. They are meant for these institutions to operate in the supposed framework under which they were established and set up. And so within the context of the general observation, you look that it has evolved. The process has evolved. If you look at the Paris Principle, you will wonder why there was no mention about the issue of women's rights or gender. But don't forget, we're talking 1991 to 1993. Where were we in our different localities with the issue about the discussion? I'm not talking about rights, just the discussion of women's rights at the time. Least to talk about being involved in prominent documents that will be used around the world. So, and I think kudos to the crafter of the document. They drafted the document in an open way that will allow the involvement and the integration of these policies as we move on. In 2006, the general observations were drafted, and there came the first mention of pluralism, squarely in the document in pluralism. And in 2007, the subcommittee on accreditation issued its first comment on the issue about pluralism within an NHRI structure. Then fast forward to 2013 and 2016, the general observations were revisited to include a broader range. In pluralism, back in 2006, there was focus on the issue about women participation and involvement in the leadership of an NHRI. But with the revision that took place in the latter years, it cast a broader net, talking about the broad representation of the society or the context within which the NHRI operates. Each of the NHRIs in this room, they operate in contexts that varies from one geography to another. And so the geography in which you operate, you need to take that into consideration. And that's one reason why the GOs cannot be very prescriptive as to what you should do in the establishment or the operation of an NHRI. Because if you have a very prescriptive nature, maybe taking into context the Society of Nepal, that will differ when you go down to Australia. So if you go down to Australia or New Zealand, you might find another context. And because this is a general framework, so you leave the space to allow for all of these things to happen. The second reason why the very prescriptive nature could not be achieved as well, or even at this time it will be difficult to have a very prescriptive nature, is that the nature of NHRIs varies. The Paris Principles did not say exactly how NHRIs should be set up. In this room, we have NHRIs that are almost institution. We have NHRIs that are commission style. We have NHRIs that is a mix of a commission and almost institution. Some institutions, some NHRIs, they even have the anti-corruption mandate. So with these different structures, ranging from 1 member to some 24 members, to some NHRIs have up to 24 members on their board. And almost institutions, you have just 1 member. So taking all of that into consideration, this broad nature, it is kept open in a way to allow NHRIs to take that into consideration. But if you go into the substance of the document of the general observation, beginning from 1.2 on the mandate of NHRIs, it talks about NHRIs having the responsibility to cover all human rights issues. If we're talking about all human rights issues, we know we are talking about the issues of the minorities, we're talking about the rights of women, we're talking about all the gender inclusive people, we're talking about all these different people within the society must be included in the mandate. So if you then look now at the subcommittee on accreditation, how it has viewed NHRIs using the general observations and the recommendations that they have issued, they have evolved as well. Coming from requesting NHRIs to have women within the leadership or requesting NHRIs to also have fair participation or representation of women within the staffing structure, it has gone beyond to what are the issues that NHRI take into consideration. If you look at the most recent report of the subcommittee on accreditation, the questions now have been asked, how are you addressing all human rights issues, including the issues of minorities, social minorities, the issue of women's rights? How are you addressing them? So it is expected that in your report, in your consultation, in your cooperation, in your collaboration, you must address these issues, because these are the lines along which the subcommittee on accreditation will view your files and say you indeed represent the definition or the meaning of NHRI. And with the statistics over the period of time, we've had over 500 reviews of NHRI since 2000 up to now. Over 500 reviews, and we have had about 84 recommendations, 84 of these reviews having recommendations when it comes to pluralism and gender inclusion. And all of those 84, it has been in different phases. That's why I talked about the involvement earlier. So in the first initial stage from 2000 to 2006, like I mentioned, 2007, we had the first mention. And then from 2007 up to the first 10 years, up to 20, let me just get the data right there for you. From 2007, going up to so between 2001 and 2004, up to present, like I said, you have had over 500 reviews, and about 84 of these reviews have had recommendations, right? But if you break it down and you go further into it, looking at it, between the up to 2007, we only had about 4 of these NHRIs. And then from 2007 to 2020, we had about 40 of these NHRIs coming up, of these reviews coming up with recommendations on gender inclusion. And between 2020 to present, we've had about 45. So you see the progress that have been made in the period of time and how fast we are moving. And all thanks to the participation and involvement of NHRIs. And I must say that these recommendations, like I said, for the strength of NHRIs, they've been given keen attention by the NHRIs that have received them. NHRIs have gone to the extent of revisiting the legislation. NHRIs have gone to the extent of including in their programs and their activities, their strategic plan as well. So if you even look at the collaboration that have taken place over the period of time, which is also one of the areas of the general observation. General observation talking about cooperation with other human rights bodies, right? It means that the civil society institution you interact with, how open are you? Are they consultative enough? And when it comes to also 1.8 on the selection and appointment of NHRIs, there are stages. While it is true, you may not have all of the different elements being represented within the body of the NHRI. It may not be possible. For example, Nepal, they have a membership of 5 commissioners sitting. But you have national commission as included. That tells you the pluralistic nature of the society. About 11
Johnny, you have 5 more minutes.
Yeah, about 11 constitutional commissions. So if you were to take all of these representatives and put them within the board of commissioners, it's not going to be possible. You have 11 groupings, you have 5. So that tells you it's not possible. But the selection and appointment process must be a place that you can include them. Who are going to be on the selection panel to have the members vetted? And the members that come on, how representative are they? Because the reason why it is important to have all of these elements included is that it gives the NHRI the perceived independence. Because you should not just be independent in your work, you should be perceived to be independent. Because those who bring their complaints to you, those who bring their issues to you, must see themselves in you. Must come to you boldly, knowing that you can represent them, you can discuss the issues, you can take in the complaints. What are the complaints that we're taking, that we're looking at? Let us look at our files. Let us do an audit. I know that the commission here, they recently conducted a gender audit. How are we taking that in our different institutions? We need to take relevant and bold steps. We need to be intentional about these issues, intentional about the complaints that we address, intentional about the cases that we deal with, intentional about the advice that we offer, intentional about the policies that we produce. And we must also do them from an equitable standard, right? Because sometimes we do equality, but from a general perspective, but we can go beyond equality. Equality is the ultimate aim, but the process in getting there, we should try to be equitable about it, knowing the taste, knowing the likes, the dislikes of all of the members of society, of all of the factors of society, to take them into consideration. Because once we do that, it means we will have effectively promoted and protected human rights in all aspects. So our legislation, our recommendations, our reports, as we issue them, they need to take them into consideration. And when you have these recommendations, you need to conduct consultations, you need to reach out to government, you need to reach out to the partners, OCHR, the APF, and the other institutions that can help you and work together. And also collaboration among the NHRIs, it is also important. And our development partners that are available, they are also there to help you within country to help push these programs forward. Because until we do that, the progress that we've made will not advance further. And if we must advance further to ensure that we have a society that is equitable to all, a society that is progressive, a society that truly represents and defends the human rights of all, each and every one of us in this room, despite of the position that we sit in, despite of the institution that we belong to, despite of the caste, the race, the nationality, or the orientation that we find ourselves in, we need to take conscious effort to ensuring that human rights are protected. Because, remember, the rights you protect today will be yours tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johnny White. It's very crystal clear, and particularly about the role of a SCA regarding respecting the Paris principles. And, well, there are many indicators for that: independence, neutrality, impartiality, inclusion. Well, today we are talking about the gender inclusion, or, well, gender equality in the context of the reviewing of the National Human Rights Institution, whether they are meeting the basic fundamental principle of gender equality in the context of the the laws and acts and policies, the mechanism, how the commission is formed, and as well as the plan of action, the practical aspects of the implementation of the plans in action. So, as Joni said that there are almost more than 500 reviews, and when I have gone through all these SCA reviews, most of the time, whether they are talking about Nepal, Pakistan, Jordan, England, Australia, or whatever it is, actually they always focused on the gender inclusion issues. How inclusivities are the NHRCs in the context of the gender. And whenever they are making the plan of action, the plan of actions are gender sensitized plan of action, or they are during the implementations also, is there a gender audit or not? So these are all very important aspects that Joni has elaborated, and I'm sure that most of the national human rights institutions, they are responding the questions raised by the recommendations made by the the SCA for the review of the membership. Well, thank you very much. Now we have Honorable Sulaiman Al-Kindi, Honorable Commissioner Member from Oman Human Rights Commission. So the floor is yours, sir. You have 15 minutes, and after 10 minutes, I will give you the
I will not
ring.
take 15
Yeah.
minutes. No. Assalamu alaikum again, and good afternoon. I will point, I will focus in two things. One, in gender equality as a general in Oman, and the second thing also in the Oman Human Rights Committee. When we are saying gender of equality, it's not mean a number. It's mean it's mean a chance and performance for both female and male. If you are visiting Oman, you will see women everywhere. We have in government 4 ladies ministers. And we can find engineering also, female engineering or ladies engineering in everywhere, in petroleum sections, in constructions, in everywhere. If I am from Ministry of Education, our ladies teacher more than male teachers. We have almost 70,000 of the teachers, almost 54 of them, they are ladies teachers. If we are coming for the genders equalities, we took it from our Holy Quran. In Holy Quran, they said, أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. I will try to translate it in English, and I hope it's right. O people, we creating you from a male and female, and we made you residents of the tribes so that you may came to know one another's. The best amongst you before Allah is the most righteous. This is the basics. And when we are coming for the Oman human rights comments, we find we are 14 members. 3 of them, they are ladies and 13 men. But the women, they are very effective. They are very active, and there is no difference. They have same chances, as I said before, for everything. I cannot say, because we don't have any problems. We don't have that much challenge in this side of the subject you are discussing about. This is what I can say only. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That's very short and sweet. So it's time for floor open, and I wish to allocate 15 minutes time. So I would like to request the distinguished guest, instead of making comments, I would like to request you to raise a particular questions to our speakers, so that they can clarify and give more insight about the gender and plurality sort of things in their perspective. So I have seen some hands were, ma'am, yours. Introduce yourself, and may I request someone to bring mic over there?
Hello and thank you all. I'm Lina Shabib from Jordan. My question is to Ms. Farkhanda from Pakistan. You talked about the percentage of political participation in the parliament in Pakistan. I was wondering about the percentage, the quota for women in the parliament. And from your experience with the quota years back, did it help in educating female participants in political participation, or was it just, having the percentages there? Thank you.
Thank you. May I clarify? Are you asking me about representation of women in the parliament? Yes. Let me clarify. Initially, we had a small quota which was equal to 17%, because you understand with the patriarchy all around, and Pakistan had it maximum at a point, it was not possible for women to come over as open candidates, except for the elite class, rather the feudal class. Men who could not contest themselves would bring in their female members of family to be represented in the... there came a 17% quota that said that there should be necessarily 17% of women in the assembly. But then in 1999, it was realized that 17% quota does not really mean anything, because they do not have a strong voice. So in order to have that, another amendment was made in the constitution, and we have 33% quota. The civil society of Pakistan has been pressing for 50% now, and let's see whether it materializes in the coming times or not. But then it made a big difference. Let me tell you, the most brilliant thing that happened with the raise of this quota was, and besides this quota where women contest, they come, we have women who are there for specialized seats as well. They are nominated by the political parties and they participate. And now, presently, in the general elections, there are women who participated as candidates independently, and they had a great success in reaching the National Assembly. And same in the provinces. Even in a province like Balochistan, we have women. We have a women deputy speaker, and then we have committees who hold women at how does the quota help? It helped women because there was a very, very vigorous movement of female political participation. We had a program of 3 years at the government level, the Ministry of Women Development that we had. They initiated a program which was from top to the village level. We have Tehsil, we have village, we have district, and then we have the provincial assembly. They had a W3P program. W3P program meant participation of women in political process, women's political participation process, and this was a phase of educating women to join politics. It trickled down from the national capital down to the village of every convent. And it took 3 years to introduce that programs. And then at the local government level, we had lots of women who were educated and inspired and also supported by different NGOs to contest the elections at the local government level. Now this proved to be a very, very successful model and experience, because when women worked at the local government level, their awareness was raised. They came to study how the system works, and then this made them very confident and they moved forward. And these were the women, most of them now, who occupy our provincial assembly seats as members of the provincial assemblies and as well as National Assembly. Another important thing that brought this awareness to women was they created a caucus. we created a caucus of women at the national level as well as the provincial level. What does this caucus do? All the women who are parliamentarians in the assembly, they are supposed to be part of the group. A group across, I mean, when they are in the caucus, they are not bound by their political party decisions. They can, if it is a matter, suppose we put up a bill for into the assembly related to some women issue. Whatever the party may be thinking about it, the women caucus will only go for the cause of women, and then this is how they make a difference and they can bring about a change. So the quota that we had and the local government system which said okay, we need to have more women in the local government as councillors, that raised the level of awareness, and then more political participation of women was possible. Does that answer? Thank you.
Thank you. Please. Is mic working there? No, someone has hold the mic, so I will give priority to her and come back to you.
Thank you so much. I'm Teresina from Timor-Leste. I have one question for the madam from Pakistan. Your explanation, you mentioned about the quota for the women in representative in parliament, in your parliament. Maybe you can share with us what kind of Pakistan National Human Rights Institution effort, how to influence the government or parliament to put the gender inclusion in the regulation or the political. Thank you.
You mean to ask how does a national commission influence the assembly? Okay. Now, it's very clear. The National Commission for Human Rights, by virtue of the law that governs the NHRI Pakistan, we have the power to intervene into any matter related to the parliament. Plus, we can make a change, not only recommend, but we can ask for a change in legislation, and that legislation occurs. Because the National Commission of Human Rights, the law under which it is working, empowers it to have its intervention into government policies. If we see there's anything against the rights of people, any single right, any small right of people being violated, we tend to get that law changed through the parliament. And then we have a close connection with the parliaments, because if you need to have any legislation promulgated in favor of anybody or anything that is violating human rights, the National Commission of Human Rights intervenes and suggests, and the parliamentarians are there to implement it in the parliament. So it has an influence because of the powers given by the Act that governs us, the law.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions to other speakers?
Thank you for all excellent presenter, all of you. And my question, and I'm wondering for question for Honorable Sulaiman Al-Kindi. You present, there is a 4 women minister. I'm wondering how, out of how many minister, there are 4 women minister. Thank you.
When I'm speaking before, I said it's not depend of the numbers. It depends of the opportunity and chances. That means it's the 4 ministers, ladies ministers, and we have, of course, there is also men ministers. It's almost 21 ministers from the fourth ministers. But in another ways, I said also we have 45 ladies teachers, and we have almost 30 teachers, 30,000 men teachers. That means, well, I'm focusing again. It's not a number. It's a chances and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, ma'am.
This is Shada Azijali from Oman Human Rights Commission. I thank all the panelists for their presentation. And I have a question for Mr. Johnny White. So you mentioned that, and also Ms. Faso, she mentioned that General Observation 1.7 didn't contain or address the appropriate percentage of the inclusion of women within NHRI composition. So, and you indicated also that the observation is reviewed every period. Unfortunately, the issue is that it is still some, we can say, obstacles for us as NHRIs to understand what is the percentage before we amend our laws and policies. Because for our experience that we went through the re-accreditation, and we also get the same recommendation that our percentage is not as the SCA indicated. So why this information is missing? And as if you say that this observations are reviewed time by time. This is my question, and because this will even help all the NHRI, even the new NHRIs, in their amending their laws and policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are some NHRIs that have had percentage included within the enabling legislation, right? Prescribing that no gender shall be more than 60%. Other NHRIs also have in their legislation requiring specifically number of women participating within the leadership. So the point I was making about the general observation on the lack of prescriptive number, it depends on the nature of the institutions we're talking about. So what if for example, if you say that within the decision-making body of an institution, you must have nothing less than 50%. If the general observation is saying that, how do you achieve that with an almost institution? That's a challenge, because that's a one-person institution, right? And that is the reason why the subcommittee on accreditation recommendation becomes jurisprudence that you can move by, that you can follow. And also that's why NHRIs are encouraged to cooperate and collaborate with other NHRIs, so that one, you can take note of what they have in their legislation, taking consideration of your society. Besides, the treated body, the Committee on Discrimination Against Women, they've come up with recommendations in various categories to states, right? Within the APF, within the region, there have been 26 reviews, right? 26 countries. All of those 26 countries, 18 of them have had NHRIs where there have been recommendations made to them. And there have been categories of the recommendations from the CEDAW committee. For example, complaints handling. About 29% of those recommendations have gone towards these NHRIs having the capability, first of all, having the mandate to handle complaints from all groups when it comes to gender and women's rights. Then you're also talking about generally the kind of complaints that they handle, even if they have a mandate. That's one group in terms of the recommendations that come from CEDAW. Then some of the NHRIs in that category, if you go down to the 2018 recommendation from CEDAW, you look at a report from Fiji, you will see something like that there. And then if you go to another set of recommendations about adequate resources, right? So adequate resources, about 47% of those recommendations that have come from the committee, they're about the adequate resources with regard to sponsoring or supporting gender inclusion within the work and the operations of the NHRI. And then the next category on the CEDAW that they've come up with is about the limitations that you find in the laws. For example, some of those limitations, they may be based on the societal structure. For example, without being appointed, right? If you go back to the previous requirement for the Indian Commission to become a chairperson, it was about former Chief Justice, right? So if you're talking about former Chief Justice, looking at the historicity of the Supreme Court of India, you've had all males. So technically, that provision was a legal limitation of allowing women to even head the NHRIs. And I think we've made progress where we've come so far. As of July 2024, as of July, we have had all of the 118 NHRIs that are accredited either A or B. 57 of them are headed by women. 57 of the 118 NHRIs are headed by women. That's progress. And if you look at the GANRI membership today, the GANRI leadership, the chairperson of GANRI, Qatar, is headed by a woman. The secretary of GANRI, Morocco, is headed by a woman. And I know that APF is going to the General Assembly in the, I think, next month. Going to this month. In fact, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to a General Assembly. The current chairperson is Korea. He's a man, he's leaving. Hopefully, we can increase that number by electing a female chairperson of the network. But to the point is about these different elements that we talk about. And even if you look at the subcommittee on accreditation recommendations, they've been in category as well. Talking about the low number of women in the leadership, also going down to the staff, because if you just put a figure in it, it could be interpreted, okay, this is where the SCA won. So all of the five, maybe you have 5 members in your institution, you have about three women and 2 men. But then all of the staff, maybe you have about 70 staff. All of the staff, maybe you wouldn't have only 10 women there. And guess what? All of those 10 women, they are the ones who were the janitor and cleaning the places around. And all of the other positions, they are all men. So then when the SCA come back to say, you need to address these things, you say, but you've made a percentage already. So I agree there are gaps that need to be addressed in terms of at what level we should expect that, in terms of the decision-making body, what is it that we are talking about, to what extent we can include that in it. And even when you have women in lead, because for example, one of the files that we saw of an NHRI, there was this huge number of women within the staff. But when you look critically at the positions that these women held, they were all the low-level positions. They were all the low-level positions. So you still, that's why I said earlier, we need an intentional, we need a conscious and a bold effort to take these things on. And the only way we can do that is by ensuring that in our policies, because the percentage might not help, it might just be limited to being there. It's not about the number. The SC has gone further to even talking about the rest of LGBTI persons. So where you have them, the kind of complaints you handle, minority, how you address people, the cases you take on. So there are these different categories. So from the mandate to the representation, to the structure, to even the process. The process also must include everyone in it. And I think it is that effort that we need to go to, and recognizing that while it is true there's no percentage, but NHRIs in their own national context can take that into consideration. And like you mentioned earlier, quotas have seen increased representation and participation of women. It's not just representation, but meaningful participation, right? So it is not just enough to have these women represented, but it must be meaningful participation that they are delivering. And with the national context, we can all take that into consideration and put in these figures. Because in some countries, the data shows that you have about maybe say 30% women. In other countries, you have a data that shows you have about 70% women. How you think it will be fair to have a prescribed percentage in that context? Some may argue yes or no, but then it's still the matter of national context that must be taken into consideration. And considering that the review that is done using the general observation is for all contexts. So you try to leave room for everyone to fit in. But when the subcommittee reviews the NHRIs, we then now look at the national and the specific context in which NHRI operates. And also with the participation in the SCA itself. It is a peer review process, but if you look at the number of NHRIs that have been members of the subcommittee over a period of time, they've been limited. And I think that's one of the gaps that we have as well. Because the perspective from NHRIs to be brought to the process is a bit limited in terms of participation. Why? Because that process is kind of a self-sponsored. So over the period of time, you've had just few NHRIs participating. Hopefully over the period of time, as we progress, as the secretariat of the subcommittee, OECHR, as we continue to work with all stakeholders, we hope that we can get to a point where no NHRIs, no A-status NHRIs particularly, will be denied of the opportunity to participate within the subcommittee process. And then the perspective you bring to the table will then be inclusive of all stakeholders, of all contexts, of all segments within the human rights community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with this, I'm sorry, due to the time constraint, I'm going to close the session, the question and answer session. And I thank you, our OSCHR representative, for clarifying all the points raised by our delegates, particularly regarding the SCA-related points focusing on the gender and pluralism. And also thank you very much to our honorable members of the Human Rights Commission, NHRIs. And well, with this, actually, it's a time to conclude by our chair, and the doctor suggested our chair for the voice rest. So he has got the throat, and he has instructed me to conclude the session on behalf of him. Justice Honorable is a very famous person in Nepal. He was the Chief Justice of Nepal. And after successfully accomplishing his role as the Chief Justice in the Supreme Court, Justice Anup Sharma is a very renowned name in Nepal. So he has made so many history-making decisions on human rights issues, on gender justice. And I remember one day when we were fighting for human rights and democracy against the dictatorship in Nepal. So I must tell you this thing, that I was arrested as a human rights activist criticizing the government when the king has seized the power and dismissed the parliament. I was arrested without proper documentation, without proper warranty. And I was in the custody for 16 days. I was produced in the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, it was his bench. And he made such a historical decision. Arrest of Gauri Pradhan, the civil society human rights leader, is absolutely illegal. And he must be released right from the court. Right from the court. And soon after that decision, hundreds of activists were released respecting that precedent. So, sir, I very much honor you for that. But when he became the chairperson of National Human Rights Commission, he is one of the very bold commissioner, chief commissioner. He has made so many recommendations to the government of Nepal and asked very valid and strong questions about maintaining the independence of the National Human Rights Commission, which our present commissioners are also doing so. So for that also, for maintaining the norms and values of National Human Rights Commission as per the Paris Principle, Justice Anup Raj Sharma has made a history. So I'm so proud to speak on behalf of him today that this very session is very fruitful, meaningful, and particularly our OSCHR friend, he has very successfully elaborated what are the procedures of this reviewing process, particularly on the NHRIs related to the justice, gender and justice, gender and pluralism, gender and equality. I hope this session is very, very fruitful and that help assist all our NHRIs in developing their policies, practices, and procedures in order to maintain the gender equality in relation to the independence of the NHRIs, and also support the campaign advocacy with the governments for the protection and the promotion of human rights. And I'm sure that this will also guide our SCA in making decisions for the accreditation, re-accreditations in a fruitful manner. And with this, thank you very much for all of you. Thank you, our speakers, and thank you to our distinguished guest. Thanks all.
Thank you all the speakers for the informative discussion. Now we would like to present a token of appreciation to all of you. So to offer the token of gratitude, I'd like to request Honorable Justice Anup Raj Sharma to present the token to all the speakers.